And welcome to the Closer's Playbook, a podcast about selling your services as a freelancer. My name's Tyler Poole. I'm here with my co-host Pete Beber. How you doing today, bud?
Hey, Tyler.
Good. So last week we did an episode on qualifying customers out, and we got a few questions we talked about discovery, and we got a few questions about it. So we wanted to expand on the topic and do an episode basically just talking about discovery. So Pete, what do you think of when you hear the word discovery?
And Tyler just told me to shut up and let's just record this because we were having the conversation diving deeper on it. So discovery, I kind of think of it as when you hear about like a legal case and the lawyers are doing discovery, they're trying to get all the information they need to either build a case or defend a case. What does everybody have? And that's really what it is for sales, right? So discovery starts with understanding your services, what you can offer, where you've done a really good job for others.
Why is that important?
So if you don't know what you're good at, then it's hard to know what to ask.
What if you're not good at anything? No, just kidding.
Then we need to start back a little bit.
Wrong business model.
Yeah. When you understand what your core competencies are, like what you're really good at, then you can start to go, all right, so what questions do I need to ask to find out if what I'm really good at is going to match with what they need?
Yeah.
So you do, we could take one of the things that you do, right? Like local SEO. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're focused on local SEO, one of the questions might be, tell me about your business.
Sure.
How many locations do you have? What are we trying to accomplish? What does your normal customer look like? This type of information, because you're trying to basically build a picture or a profile of this customer and then say, does this match with what I have to offer? So if they're like, well, we're an international, this is like, well, hold on. I do local SEO, so I can work in individual markets. But if you're looking for somebody to have a global, SEO solution, I'm not your guy.
Right. So what's the difference between qualifying and discovery?
So they go hand in hand.
Yep.
Discovery is going to help you to qualify. It's going to be what allows you to decide if that customer is qualified in, meaning they're going to be a good fit for you to work with, or qualified out, meaning it's not going to be a good fit and it's better for both of you to cut bait and move on.
Perfect. Yeah. One of the questions we saw was, what is the difference? So that's it in a nutshell. Discovery are the questions that lead you to, I guess, the conclusion of qualifying.
Yeah. And you want to ask questions about their business. I mean, I harp on this all the time, right? What is the business problem we're solving for? You got to understand the business, the problems that they have, what they're driving, what they're looking to change, because they're hiring you for some reason. Maybe they're just replacing somebody who didn't work out. Maybe they're replacing somebody because they can no longer afford their services anymore, or they left. They're no longer doing that. So is this are you replacing someone, or is this the first time that you've ever worked with somebody in this capacity, right? That's going to tell you too, if they've been working with somebody, there's a level of expectation that they have.
Right.
And versus we've never utilized SEO before.
Sure.
So now you get to set the expectation.
And that's really interesting because discovering keyword, you like that, to what their expectations are going into the project can kind of help you define your price too. Because if they're looking for a white labeled service with nice reports and whatever quality is to them, by asking discovery questions, you can find out whether or not you need to maybe up your service, or maybe they're looking for a polish that you don't tend to offer that really isn't important to the quality of your product. But if I've got a customer who wants these nice white labeled reports and the systematized and whatever, that's honestly not something I do. So I send them over reports that I get that aren't white labeled, that have the information they need on them. But if they want this polish,
so
qualify them out.
Yeah, one thing that I think of when you talk about that is Discovery is getting data and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so if all of a sudden you're on 2, 3, 4 calls and they want those things, that could be time for you to evaluate to say, am I putting myself out of position, am I qualifying myself out because I don't have X? And would it be important for me to add that, right? If all of a sudden you're like, wow, there seems to be a demand for these types of services, you can sit back and evaluate yourself and your core competencies and go, what would it mean to my business as a freelancer if I don't include those things?
Right.
What would it mean if I do? Am I going to close more business? Am I going to be able to charge a higher price? Is it going to have no real net effect? Could it create more work without a real upside in income? Those are the questions that you can start to ask because you've done the discovery.
Right.
What we don't want, and the reason I talked about in previous episodes, like walking through that statement of work or the proposal, I don't really want there to be any surprises. If I'm like, hey, this is a great fit, it sounds like it's going to come through, and then they're like, hey, we decided to go in another direction. You want to understand, like, okay, well, what expectation did I miss? And you can actually do like post,
right.
Sale loss discovery if they're open to it, and just say, hey, I'd just like to understand where I fell short, right? And
you alluded to it a little bit there. Discovery doesn't stop. You can be on a call with a client you've had for 3 or 4 months, and they may say, hey, are you sending me over XYZ report? And you could be like, XYZ report, do you have a sample of something you've been sent before? I can send it over. But I'd like to make sure I'm hitting the points that you want. And if you build up a rapport with a client, they'll be like, oh yeah, sure. This is the report that they sent. And some of my reports that I send now are combinations of things that I discovered clients were getting from other freelancers, other SEO agencies, and they like them, they expect them, and it's something that's not hard for me to put together. But right. I would have never known if I wasn't continuing that process.
Yeah, so discovery in general is like the way I use the term discovery is more like to qualify in or qualify out, but it's a good point. The other thing that I like to do is when you're on a project, you've got these check-in points, right? You're not just like going into a cave for the next 3 months and you come out. You have checkpoints, right? You've talked about them. So a good place to start those calls is, hey, so what we laid out is this is the goal. Has anything changed? Because sometimes they change.
Right.
Actually, yeah, we had this thing come up, and so we really need to focus on X for this next month. Now right there, you have everybody's on the same page. Expectations are set. Most of the time, it's probably going to be, yep, that's still where we're at. But you want to ask that question as you go through. So, if I'm thinking of discovery, know what you're really good at. Start there. List out all the things. Maybe feedback that you've gotten from customers where they've said, hey, this was great. You did a great job here. Or, hey, I could use something a little bit different over here. Take all that feedback back, evaluate what your offering is, what your service is, and then build questions off of that. And it's hard. There's just so many things that people can be doing. It's hard to say, like, you have to ask this question. You got to understand your business, your services first and foremost.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we both obviously just from this discussion kind of have a different definition of what discovery is. But I think it's really those exploratory questions.
Yeah. And sometimes those questions might feel uncomfortable. It's in the uncomfortable questions that we probably get the most information.
100%.
And just remember, you're asking these questions because they're going to be better for you and the customer to find out, especially early, right? Because what we don't want, I'm big on reputation, and I know you are too, right? We all have a reputation. Our name stays with us. And, what we don't want is to have differing expectations so that you're not delivering. The best is that they have low expectations and you're just over delivering, right? The low expectations are great, but what we don't want is to set improper expectations, and we can do that by simply not asking the right questions.
Right.
So discovery is hugely important. And one of the things we were talking about earlier is if you do really good discovery, you could find out that the impact that you can have on their business could be substantially more than what you charge, right? You might be bringing in a 50x return on in revenue based on what they're going to pay you. Well, maybe you can inch your price up a little bit. Another reason why I don't like to say, here's my price right out of the gate. You want to do that discovery to say like, oh, what kind of impact do I have? Something that's going to allow you to do too is maybe there's certain industries. I know you've talked before about like lawyers versus plumbers.
Sure.
Lawyers in Manhattan versus a plumber in Iowa.
Right. My favorite comparison.
Yeah. So, if you can have a really outsized impact on that plumber in Iowa, then maybe you can start to raise your rates. Mm-hmm. And that lawyer in Manhattan might actually be more price sensitive.
Tell you what, at least 2 or 3 of my general price hikes have come from discovery questions where, I was sitting down with a client and they gave me a number where I'm like, oh, people are making a lot more. And it's also, it comes from listening to other podcasts or courses that I've taken, whatever the case is. But a lot of times you find out from a customer, if you're doing discovery well, that you can be charging more than what you are. And at least 3 of my price hikes have been because of discovery type questions.
Yeah. So stepping back to like something we talked about in an early episode was, somebody sends you an email, okay, send me your price. This is why we don't want to send them over the price. Just even saying, hey, pushing back on that and saying, hey, like, I don't know yet if I can, if what I have to offer is going to help you, would you be against a 30-minute call just to make sure we're on the same page? And then I'd be more apt to talk about price if it's a fit.
And even that in itself is a discovery question, because if they're not willing to jump on the phone with you, you've just discovered that's the easiest opt-out ever. You've just discovered that that's not the type of client you want to work with.
Yeah. So you can just do an autoresponder with that, and you push one button and done, versus, now you're getting your pricing together. Maybe you're looking for a white paper that you've done or a case study or like, oh, and like writing this whole thing up back to them. You can just say, hey, I understand you want a price. I don't know if I'll be able to help you just yet. Would you be against a 30-minute call to make sure that my services would be a good fit for the outcomes you're looking for?
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Pretty basic concept.
Yep. So discovery is learning everything you can about the customer in relation to, your services offering. And if you find that it's not the right fit, qualify out like we talked about on the last one early, and then you can move on to more opportunities that could be a good fit for you. So
ask good questions. That's what discovery is.
Ask good questions. Love it. Probably a good place to leave it.
Yep. All right. Pete, thanks for joining me this afternoon. And for everybody listening, thank you for listening. Download, like, subscribe, all the good stuff. And we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.